New records have surfaced revealing that Tiffany Henyard and her boyfriend Kamal Woods were pulling in a staggering $450,000 annually. This raises a big question. How can someone making that much money not afford to pay rent? According to recent reports from WGN, the numbers don't lie. They've broken down the financials, showing the high salaries and questionable spending that were part of Tiffany Henyard's controversial tenure. There's a long video coming up, almost 6 minutes, filled with classic footage of Tiffany Henyard, including an investigation by Ben Bradley. This is the same reporter who uncovered many of the issues that led to her downfall. Let's take a look at how her reign as the so-called super mayor is unraveling, as she faces an FBI investigation and massive criticism for her spending and decision-making. In the coming weeks, Tiffany Henyard is set to leave office after a crushing defeat at the ballot box. Her controversial spending habits and clashes with trustees have brought her leadership into question. The infamous Ben Bradley, an investigative reporter from WGN, was instrumental in exposing the problems that plagued her administration. One of the most memorable moments in the footage shows Tiffany Henyard blowing off questions from a reporter during a food giveaway event. Even as she faced public scrutiny, she appeared to remain unfazed, focusing instead on putting on a show for the cameras. The community lined up for what was dubbed a final food giveaway, an event where tens of thousands of taxpayer dollars were spent. Yet Henyard's actions appeared to be more about her personal gain than the people she was supposed to serve. Tiffany Henyard's tenure involved spending a significant amount of taxpayer money, some of which did fund worthwhile programs. However, the records also show that she, along with her boyfriend, benefited handsomely, with questionable ethics surrounding their earnings. Last year alone, Henyard was paid over $347,000 from the governments of Dalton and Thornton Township, two areas she controlled. This is more than the salary of Chicago's mayor, and when you factor in her boyfriend's earnings, more than $100,000, it paints a picture of a leadership team that was living like CEOs without delivering the results expected from public servants. Henyard's boyfriend worked in a program aimed at preventing youth violence, but reportedly never showed any results. Despite this, he continued to take paychecks, contributing to the combined $450,000 income they were pulling in. The records also reveal that Henyard received a monthly expense allowance of $4,900 and a $1,100 vehicle allowance on top of her salary. Even more alarming, Dalton taxpayers spent 6 figures on 2 SUVs to chauffeur Henyard around. Yet despite the lavish spending, Henyard hasn't attended a single board meeting since losing the election. When questioned about her absence, she simply ignored the inquiry and deflected by performing a little dance as if the public's concerns were nothing more than a distraction. This behavior only further proved that her actions were selfish and disconnected from the needs of the community she was supposed to serve. It wasn't about helping the people, it was about keeping up appearances and maintaining control. Stephanie Weidman, a former employee who worked with Henyard for over 20 years, was one of the first to blow the whistle on Henyard's antics. She suggested that had Henyard simply owned up to her mistakes, the public would have forgiven her. But instead, Henyard continued to put on a performance, turning every mistake into a spectacle. This behavior became a regular occurrence, almost like a sitcom that people couldn't stop watching. However, when it came to facing criticism, Henyard deflected by playing the race card, suggesting that attacks on her were rooted in racial bias. She painted herself as a victim, shifting the narrative away from her actions and focusing on a narrative of power and shame. It was a classic move from Henyard, avoiding accountability at every turn while trying to manipulate public perception. The situation continues to escalate as new revelations show just how much taxpayers have been footing the bill for Tiffany Henyard's extravagant lifestyle. Despite the claims of fiscal responsibility, Henyard's actions suggest otherwise. GN Investigates has documented first-class trips taken by Henyard and her entourage, which cost taxpayers over $100,000. These trips included stays at luxurious hotels like the Four Seasons, as well as lavish steak dinners. When confronted about these expenses, Henyard's response was defensive. She claimed, "I do not handle anything related to the credit cards," despite being directly linked to some of the charges. Even when questioned about a trip to Losity, Vegas Henyard tried to deny it, but the evidence was clear. Taxpayers were paying for these lavish trips. This behavior only adds to the growing list of questionable actions tied to her leadership. Adding to the controversy, Henyard's contract includes stipulations that benefit her financially, even when she's not in the office. She receives $600 a day when traveling out of state on township business, and $400 for travel within Illinois. On top of that, her travel expenses are also covered by taxpayers. When you consider that Henyard and her boyfriend were already making a combined total of $450,000 annually, it paints a picture of excessive spending that many find hard to justify. That's nearly $40,000 a month, a sum many would find astronomical. But instead of being fiscally responsible, Henyard's actions suggest a disregard for the people she was supposed to serve. As she jetted off to places like Las Vegas, Atlanta, and Portland, the costs continued to pile up, with taxpayers covering the bill for her and her entourage's travel and daily allowances. When asked about these hefty paydays, Henyard's successor offered a somewhat detached perspective. He explained that salaries are tied to what one can deliver, hinting that professional athletes make millions because of their value, just as Henyard's salary was tied to the position she inherited. The reality, however, is more complex. Henyard was able to secure a salary that was far higher than what her predecessor had, taking over a position that had been held by someone who had been in office for many years. She essentially inherited an inflated salary, and though she didn't seem to be delivering much in return, the high pay continued. Her boyfriend, Kamal Woods, was also making over $100,000 for a role that many claim didn't involve much work. When you add all this together, it's clear that Henyard and Woods were living well off taxpayer dollars, yet she couldn't even pay a modest increase in her rent. It raises serious questions about Henyard's financial management. How could someone earning such a significant amount be struggling to pay $200 more in rent? This contradiction points to deeper issues within Henyard's leadership, suggesting that the FBI may be on the right track with their investigation. While the latest revelations might not be entirely new, they do provide a clearer picture of Henyard's lavish spending habits and the questionable expenses she approved, all while the taxpayers were footing the bill. This could be a sign of much bigger issues that still need to be uncovered. The financial picture surrounding Tiffany Henyard becomes even more troubling when you factor in her extravagant perks. It's not just the salary, it's the additional benefits, the allowances, and the questionable spending that raise serious concerns. Henyard was pulling in rock star level money, with her total compensation reaching incredible amounts when you factor in all the bonuses and allowances. Despite the ongoing FBI investigation, a questionable cancer charity, and even a physical altercation at a board meeting, Henyard seems to continue with an air of confidence. There are even questions about her security detail. With 2 large SUVs and a host of police officers accompanying her, many wonder whether Henyard's safety is truly at risk, or if she's simply abusing the system to continue her lavish lifestyle. The fact that she already receives a car allowance, yet is still rolling with such heavy security, raises a lot of red flags. Despite all of this, there's still uncertainty about whether the FBI will bring actual charges against her. While there are signs of questionable spending and ethics violations, it remains unclear whether it will rise to the level of criminal activity. Given the often murky nature of South Chicago politics, it's difficult to predict whether Henyard will face serious consequences. She may end up facing a reprimand, a fine, or perhaps a minor ethics deal, but it's hard to say whether she will be seriously held accountable. Avoiding accountability at every turn while trying to manipulate public perception. The reality is, despite the questions surrounding her actions, we haven't yet seen anything that would lead to substantial criminal charges. Even with all the revelations, the investigation seems to lack the smoking gun needed to push things forward to a legal conclusion. For many, it's hard to accept that someone so seemingly reckless with taxpayer money might not face more severe repercussions. But in the world of Chicago politics, it's not uncommon for officials to skate by with minimal consequences. The situation feels like it could end with Henyard getting a slap on the wrist, but the possibility of her facing any serious time seems unlikely. Still, the public's attention remains fixed on the situation, and the FBI continues to investigate. Sources report that agents have recently visited several of Henyard's allies, looking for cooperation and additional information. It's clear that the FBI isn't done with her just yet, and they may be waiting for the dust to settle before moving forward with any formal charges. As Henyard's term comes to an end, questions remain about her future and the fallout from this investigation. She's already promised that the show will go on, but what that really means remains to be seen. The investigation is ongoing, and Henyard's allies are reportedly still being questioned by the FBI. Meanwhile, her six-figure salary will be slashed to a more modest amount once a new supervisor takes over, but some of the other perks, like allowances for travel and security, will remain intact. As this situation unfolds, it's clear that there's much more to this story than meets the eye, and it's likely that the full extent of Henyard's actions has yet to be revealed. Tiffany Henyard's financial situation raises even more eyebrows when you break it down. Despite reportedly making a substantial net income of around $225,000 a year after taxes, she allegedly struggled to make ends meet when her rent was increased by $200, bringing it to $2,400 a month. This doesn't quite add up considering her income. With her significant monthly net earnings, you'd think she'd have no trouble covering basic expenses, yet Henyard and her boyfriend reportedly couldn't figure out how to pay this relatively modest rent increase. The story just doesn't make sense. She and her boyfriend could easily afford this, yet they chose not to pay, a situation that ultimately led to her facing eviction. This bizarre series of events started in October 2024, when Henyard's landlord had to raise the rent due to skyrocketing property taxes. Henyard's story, though, seemed to take an odd turn. Rather than simply paying the additional rent, she seemed to dig her heels in and refuse to pay, even though she had the financial means. Some speculate that it was a deliberate act of defiance. On her part, a statement against being stuck with higher costs, even though her net income should have easily covered the new rent. It almost feels like she was testing the system or simply refusing to bend to the new terms. In the aftermath of the eviction drama, rumors began circulating that Henyard had relocated to an unconventional place, above a car wash. Whether this is true or not remains unclear, but it's a curious detail to add to an already strange narrative. Whatever the case, the whole situation has largely disappeared from the headlines, leaving many wondering how it all fizzled out so quietly. It's as though people stopped paying attention or simply gave up trying to figure out what's really going on with Henyard. Despite the drama surrounding her personal finances, the much larger concern remains the ongoing FBI investigation. As more revelations about her financial dealings surface, it seems like the investigation is only deepening, with no clear resolution in sight. It feels as though this situation is reaching a tipping point, with the community and the media waiting for something to break, something concrete that could signal an end to Henyard's tumultuous tenure. As the story continues to unfold, it's hard to shake the feeling that we haven't yet seen the last of this saga. The FBI is still watching, and while Henyard may no longer be in office, the repercussions of her actions are far from over.